A new day as we're off and running from the starting gate. 10 races on this Saturday afternoon, already October 21st, week number 3 here at Gulfstream Park West in full swing. Jason Blewett, Ron Nicoletti catching up with you. A little Saturday edition of GPW today. What's going on with you?
GPW has a sloppy main track. All races have been taken off the turf this afternoon, so make sure you factor that into your handicapping. And a good day to be betting here because we got a couple of carryovers today.
And this has been anything but pretty much the antithesis of a chalk parade or procession. We've had only 3 winning favorites this week, Ronnie. They are 3 for 25. Favorites were completely shut out yesterday at 0 for 9, and as a result, we'll do a little housekeeping just to get you up to speed with what's on tap today. Got a couple of really nice carryovers on this third Saturday card of the fall meet. It all begins with an off-the-turf race a little after 1:15 p.m. with that race 1, dollar rolling super high 5, and of course the starting point as well, Ronnie, in our first pick 5.
Pick 5 starts right in race number 1. Jason will have a ticket in just a couple of moments. And as we mentioned, Rainbow Six is starting to build their $78,000 plus, and that'll be in race 5 today with that 10 race card.
And it was cold as ice. Somehow, someway, breaking his maiden in yesterday's last race for trainer Joe Orcito and jockey Wilmer Garcia. Not only, and he was covered in the Rainbow Six by more than 1 ticket, but he did trigger that carryover, that number you're looking at of just under $16,000 in Saturday's late pick 5. And you know those carryovers, Ronnie, especially Rainbow Six, of course, that's basically a daily event. But whenever you can get a nice carryover in the late pick 5, that's a bet, I mean, people really hone in on.
They really hone in on. And the beauty of that bet, 50-cent wagers, so you can add that extra horses. And always, every time we have any kind of carryover in the late pick 5, it skyrockets. So great day for, as I mentioned, betting here at Gulfstream Park West, but you got to deal with the conditions. Now we start the day with a sloppy track throughout Florida. If you don't know the weather in Florida by the end of the day, you got to pay attention. The track is certainly going to dry out, but no turf at all.
And this track here at Gulfstream Park West has been renowned at drying fairly quickly, and we'll certainly keep tabs on it as this 10-race card progresses. Already day number 16 of this Gulfstream Park West fall meeting. Now the first race again kicks off the super high 5, the early pick 5, and the first of 10. Little ticket coming your way right now, and I feel pretty comfortable using the 2 and 9 in this first race. The speed of the number 2 Indian Scout, who I do think is the fastest in here early on. He'll try to go off the claim for Tammy Levy, and he'll try to do that getting the 1 mile distance. If the mile distance trips him up, there's no doubt in my mind that the number 9 horse, Eye of the Lion, is the best stayer in this race, more of a grinder for Joe Catanese, and I think this is a perfect spot for Eye of the Lion, who I have no qualms or no hesitations or no questions about staying that 1 mile distance. Race number 2 on the program, pretty happy too, much like the first, Ronnie, with Poopsie Doopsie and the number 5, Wiggle It, Jiggle It. They look like the right 2, right?
Yeah, definitely the right 2 in there, and we'll see how that plays out. I think you got the right 2 in that.
What about Polango? He looks like a big favorite in race 3.
Yeah, race 3, Polango right on top of the ticket on mine too, and he looks like the one to beat in there off his last performance. So a good single in there, and he's going to try 20 condition claimers. Looks like a good spot.
At the 2-7-8 between In My Father's Image, Life's Reward, who seem to be pretty close in ability, and then the drop down, who I like, who's very well posted in the 8 Donegal Hall. I think using the 3 of them probably just gives you a free bingo square if you use the 3 per se in race number 4, and it all comes to a close in race number 5. A very tricky, Ronnie, cash out given the off the turf $10,000 maiden claimer status of that field.
Yeah, I went the Rainbow Six starts. I went 4 deep in that race because I couldn't figure it out. So I actually started my day with 4 in there. We'll talk about that ticket a little later on, but I thought that of that sequence, the early pick 5 and the Rainbow Six going together, that was the toughest race where if you can go deep keeper.
Now, as far as the first, what are you doing in here? I know we're big fans of trader Tammy Levy, and she, with Jose Valdivia, Tyler Gaffalione, had received some calls on this card, by the way, when it was drawn a few days back. But he is spending a Saturday up north at Belmont Park. I know they're having their New York Bred Showcase Day, always a terrific day of racing. And in mentioning the New York Breds at Belmont, it's Maryland Million Day at our sister track, Laurel Park.
Big day in Maryland and lots of great racing. They have fantastic weather up there, so make sure you take a look at what's going on up there at our sister track in Laurel, and our buddy Acacia Courtney up there trying to figure out what's going to go on as far as wins, places, and shows.
On a big day, stakes galore and some gigantic fields. I was perusing through the Saturday DRF during my dinner last night up in Fort Lauderdale at home, and yeah, some gigantic fields today at Laurel, so good stuff all around. You like Peter Walder, and I guess you probably like this horse on the turf, and you're just hoping he'll handle the dirt?
Yeah, and I mean, you don't know if he's going to handle the dirt, but he's dropping to the 12.5 level locally. She's stretching out to this mile distance. He rallied to finish fourth behind that repeat winner called ABG Mastro. It was a 16-claimer on the Gulfstream turf. He's only tried the off-track once in his career, but it's Peter Walder, MSCL Jaramillo, and I think the class here, if this horse, I'm guessing, can handle the off-track, I think he's the one to beat, and I think you'll get a little bit of a price because he's never really tried what he's going to be doing today.
I know you've got a pretty good handle, in fact, an excellent handle, more so than anyone I've ever met by 31 lengths, Secretariat margin on the Santa Cruz bloodlines, the Stack, the Admiral's Cruise. So I'll put my faith in you and maybe include Stay in Cruise on my early pick 5 ticket that also uses the speed of the number 2 Indian Scout, and again the staying power of the 9 Eye of the Lion for Joe Catanese. So walked away with a 1-2 finish yesterday here at GPW.
Yeah, and that horse looks like a logical contender.
Yep.
You got it right on top. You know, he finished second here behind that hard-knocking Kinane. So I think he's the logical choice. He was entered for the main track only, and that's exactly what he's doing today.
They are playing his game after some good efforts recently behind the likes of Kinane and Manolete, 2 horses who would be overwhelming favorites in today's first. As we move on to race number 2, a field of 7 set to go 5.5 on the main track in this 2 lifetime 3 and up filly and mare 6250 claimer. And as we once again mentioned, not the harness champion who's made a few million in Wiggle It Jiggle It. We have got the thoroughbred version, a filly by Tiago, took all sorts of play and won her debut in a race we're going to show you right now on October 5th. Just 16 days ago at GPW, it was Wiggle It, Jiggle It, and you know she'll have no problem if it starts to rain. We get one of these flash Florida storms, because she, boy oh boy, did she like the slop.
Yeah, she drew off to won it by 6+ lengths on that sealed sloppy track, and that's how the afternoon is starting. So Wiggle It, Jiggle It, a logical contender to be on the ticket. I think people that are putting the early pick 4 together or the pick 5, they might want a single right here because of this performance on that off track.
What about good old Poopsie, who does return? It got to be used, right?
Yeah, I got to use it. I'm just saying some might because of just the conditions that they see there. But Poopsie Doopsie, excuse me, moved to the Angel Kiros barn after the claim, cuts back to 5.5 furlongs, opened and surrendered that 3.5 length lead. But I want to show you a stat on the Angel over the last 5 years with Poopsie Doopsie. First start after the claim, low-level claim is on the dirt right here at Gulfstream Park West. So it's limited, but he's 3 for 5, 60%, 80% in the money, and a positive return on invested. So I dumbed it down to just over this track here, and that's a good stat.
Very good claiming barn. I mean, this is a sharp operation, and not getting cute with Poopsie Doopsie running this horse back just 2 weeks after they claimed her out of a good second behind a horse in Princess Knoll, who would be favored in the second. And speaking of race number 2, the second consecutive very live mount on the card today for jockey Jose Valdivia Jr. As we move ahead, race number 3 on the program, a 1-turn mile, or excuse me, a 2-turn mile, as we are off the turf, and we have a field of 6 ready to go in this 3 and up filly and mare $20,000 claimer, and a case of the 8. It's either Palongo, and I'm sorry, I know this horse will be an underlaid favorite and a insanely short price, but she is hands down the most talented horse in this race. And the good news is she's already won on the dirt, which kind of surprised me.
Well, the only time she's ever tried the dirt is when she won. That was at Tampa. So she's going to try these condition claimers, $20,000 variety on the main track. Really consistent turf campaign across down the Gulfstream. She was either first, second in like 5 races. And so on the class level, definitely she's won on a main track. So Polanco on the top of my ticket along with yours.
Probably odds on. The more I looked at this race, I said, man, she's going to be a monstrous favorite. And you saw the comment with my early pick 5. It's either singling, at least in my estimation, singling Polanco or basically banging out the all button in race number 3. We move on to the 4th, field of 7. Another scheduled dirt race on the card, a 3 and up, $6,250 claimer for 3-year-olds and upwards. You can take out the number 6 and the number 9. That leaves us with a field of 7. And even though Mother Nature, at least as far as the early morning and late night with the rain, didn't really cooperate, we wanted some turf on today's card. But we'll deal with the hand we're dealt. It is pretty cool, and I think one of the neatest stories in South Florida today is the basically the emergence of jockey Juan Carlos Diaz, who is the all-time leading rider from Puerto Rico and has put up some incredibly impressive numbers. In fact, 4,530 victories. We'll see what he's made of here in the United States. The Master, as they call him in PR, Juan Carlos Diaz riding at GPW.
Yeah, and a special route for him. Everybody knows what happened in Puerto Rico with the Hurricane Irma. So, Maria, this one coming up. And he's a great rider. I mean, he's a great rider. He's got how many wins this year? 200 and something already.
He's been averaging, and they only run, I believe, 3 days a week over in Puerto Rico. He's been averaging over 200 wins a year since 2001. And obviously, the local trainers and horsemen on the South Florida Gulfstream Park West colony have really opened him and welcomed him, I should say, with open arms, as he's got 4 calls on today's card. Among them, Nice Reward, who is a major player here, given the fact that he's just sharp and in good form.
Yeah, Life Reward is turning back to the 7-furlong distance today after a couple of solid efforts at a mile in which he includes that victory at a 1-turn mile across town. Second place finish, going 2 turns here, so I think there's a logical choice. But both you and I sort of ended up with Donegal Hall, who's dropping back after a trio of second place finishes at this 6,250 level. Stalks and fades, but it's against better. You look at his record, he's 4 for 9 in the money in the off track. But here's the thing that I sort of made me a little leery.
Yeah.
0 for 12 in the win column at the distance.
And he's 1 for his last 23. This is not a horse, at least of late, that has gotten his win picture taken all that regularly, and he's going to attract attention with the drop. But this is where he belongs, and I had really liked some of his company lines earlier in the summer and even early fall, running for $6,250. So Ronnie and I in agreement as the first 4 races come to a close. We'll see what Mr. Juan C. Diaz can do, and we'll see what this man has lurking, waiting for you in the Rainbow Six.
At ExpressBet, we celebrate the champions that make horse racing great. That's why we provide more ways to bet from more places than ever. We've built an entire family of brands to give players more of the rewards they deserve, give bettors the information they need to win, and provide a community for horse bettors. Because the best way to support the champions of horse racing is to champion horse racing. ExpressBet. We are racing.
Coming down to the finish with Fort Martin to catch him. They're not going to catch him. Fort Martin, the winner. He went clear of the stop, and he's coming out, turning handsprings. Fort Martin, brilliant in the statement master. What a thriller in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Fort Martin gets deep, nose and nose to the wire. Fort Martin has won it.
And watching that Fort Lauderdale commercial and thinking that, wow, the Breeders' Cup Saturday is just 14 days away out of Del Mar. I mean, how nuts is that?
And how many times we show this commercial, Fort Lauderdale always wins the Stephen Foster.
Yes, and Mucho Macho Man just couldn't get by him in that Breeders' Cup Classic a few years ago out in Southern California. And I think of Fort Lauderdale and one of my favorite 2-year-olds to run this summer at Gulfstream Park and in South Florida. And her name, Blonde Bomber, and she's owned by Arundel, trained by Stanley Gold, and they are on their way out to Del Mar. They're going to try the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies on the dirt for Blonde Bomber, and I like it.
Yeah, I think it has a shot in there. So let's show you my Rainbow Six ticket now, and you're going to see I have a $28.80 ticket. And as I mentioned earlier, I went 4 deep in here. I think the 3 and 9, the Leverkusen and Charlie Atlas are right in there. In the 7th race, Gotta Curlin. I singled this horse. It's Todd Pletcher. I love this horse on the turf today. Of course, the race was taken off the turf. I think it's the logical one in there, and I was able to spread it. Went 3 deep in race number 8 and 9, excuse me. And then the final race, 3 deep with 2, 7, and 9.
And that final race is a little tricky. I really believe race number 10 today is a little bit of a tricky cash out. Those are 2-year-old fillies running in a 7-furlong off the turf race, which we will talk about in just a few moments. Now, Leverkusen is very much the starting point in race number 6. Now, as far as race number 5 on the afternoon, let's talk about This Dude's a Lady. Leverkusen, my late pick 5 single, who we'll get to in just a second. You may have the wild card in the race, and that is the 4 Quack Quack. And not a lot needs to be said other than I think if she can handle the dirt against a group like this, she's probably going to win.
And that was my thought process. Love this one on the turf. And I think the morning line when it was done for the turf was like 12-1. Dropping to the 10 level, cutting back to 7/8 on the main track today. Hoping both those karma changes produce the... it's been an elusive maiden, trying to get that elusive maiden victory. And you mentioned Juan Carlos Diaz. He'll be aboard Quack Quack, so we're going to be rooting him on.
Yeah, he's got back-to-back consecutive, in fact, 3 live calls or consecutive calls from races 3, 4, and 5, but especially live with Life's Reward in the 4th and then coming back with Quack Quack in the 5th. For me, I like the progression second out with the number 5, This Dude's a Lady, and I'm hoping in a field like this where they're basically playing her game. I know she doesn't play it all that well, but she is a dirt horse, and she'll get to go the 7/8 today at GPW on the dirt. Getting back to Leverkusen, he is hands down as we turn our attention to race number 6 and the starting point of Saturday's late pick 5. He is very much a focal point and the centerpiece for trainer Victor Barboza Jr. And as we look at my ticket, fairly modest play today for 16 bucks. I feel like I'm pretty happy and comfortable with him as the anchor. Loves a wet track, and I think this is probably Victor Barboza Jr. getting a little aggressive because he can, and he's got some numbers to back him up, and who knows, maybe he wants to free up a stall with GP's championship meet around the corner. See, I didn't single the 7 Gotta Curlin, and I get why you singled him. I just, with Todd Pletcher on a very uncharacteristic cold streak here in Miami Gardens at 0-for-6 for the meet, I wanted to use the only other dirt horse in the race, and that is the 8, Mr. Attila. As far as Pletcher, he is very much a part of the conversation in the 8th with Robusto. I also like quite a bit Fearless Dragon, who's cutting back to, I think, what he really wants to do. 7/8 to a mile around 1 turn is the sweet spot for Fearless Dragon. Have him on top. 9th race, both Abtal and the 11 Conscious Decision handle wet tracks. It's no problemo for that pair. And dude, I used 4 in the last race, and that's the kind of race it is. If I get there, I'm hoping if I'm live, I've got enough. I really am not being candid about it, 100% confident.
Well, that's the beauty of the Rainbow Six. It's your template, my template with your pick 5, my Rainbow Six. We'll see how this thing plays out. It makes it sort of fun when you got to try and figure out beforehand how certain horses are going to handle what they've been given a track that they weren't expecting to run on today.
Now, Leverkusen, victory by this guy back on September 29th. If we can backtrack just a few weeks ago, in fact, closing weekend of the summer meet over in Hallandale Beach at Gulfstream Park. And big favorite that afternoon. He likes 7/8, and he does look solid. Although he is basically, Ronnie, in today's 6th race, have 11 challengers, and some of them have solid connections and are running off the claim. If he shows up, I think, with what his recent races and form has been, he might just be a little too good for these.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. And that's in my ticket. I only used 2. The only other horse I used in there was Charlie Atlas, who's getting Lasix today. Responded to a surface switch and dropped down with a front-running victory against 6,200 2 lifetime times. It's sort of a speed save for me, but I agree with you with Leverkusen.
Yeah, Adagio would be another horse I would consider if you want to play around in some tries or supers or the high five as he runs first off the claim. In his recent races, he's actually turned into a fairly formful 6250 claimer after running. I know you are. After running and running and facing the likes of Three Rules and Gunnevera during his 2-year-old season. I like the job Herman Walensky does. I know you're a fan, and he's got that horse first off the claim.
Well, I was abused all winter long.
You're Adagio's biggest fan.
I was abused all winter long by Gabby Gaudet and Keisha Courtney for picking Adagio a couple of times. And finally,
you got him home.
Turned it around, sort of. So exactly what you said.
And I think he's going to hit the board today and maybe even make it pretty tight against Leverkusen. As we turn our attention now and continue on the second half of this Saturday card at GPW, 3 and up off the turf, maiden special weight runners in the 7th. It's really all about the 7 Gotta Curlin. If this horse relishes the wet track today for Todd Pletcher, he's probably a better horse than the 8 Mr. Attila, and he's probably going to win. We'll show you a couple of nuggets here, digging into the nitty-gritty regarding this son of Curlin, who the family, despite the fact, Ronnie, this horse sold for almost $400K, the family's been, to be blunt about it, on the average side. And the one thing that shocked me is that this barn, and I know this is a meet, Todd really hasn't opened the floodgates yet, but his horses, at least the ones that have been super short in the odds column, have left a little to be desired.
Without a doubt, but just the level of competition in here. And you're right about Mr. Attila. We both used that one in second, who was back with maidens, sort of tilted windmills last time, coming up empty behind Three Rules. They put him in the carry back. He's the son of Gosap. He runs okay on fast and wet tracks. I just thought that Gotta Curlin has got to win here.
And I am no longer, and it just is a nature of loving Florida and living in Florida, and this is the circuit that I follow now and work at, no longer tied into the daily goings-ons up in the Big Apple. But that horse Coppertown, and looking at Gotta Curlin, that Coppertown is 2 for 3, also trained by Pletcher, just came back a few days ago with a 104 buyer. So you do have Gotta Curlin, who's not going to pay a big price, of course, coming out of a race in which he was beaten by perhaps a pretty good horse, and a horse we'll see over the winter time during the championship meet across town at Gulfstream Park. It's the 8th race today as we continue on GPW today. This other than $16,000 optional claimer marks the 2nd consecutive race on the program for trainer Todd Pletcher, who won 16 races here last fall, was 40% as far as his strike rate went, and he's got Robusto, and I feel like Robusto is very much the key to this race off a performance we'll look at on September 29th. Was this horse, in hindsight, Ronnie, a colt by Bernardini, just crying out for the dirt all along? What do you do with them?
Well, he's got the off track, and they also put the blinkers on, so either was the surface blinkers or both combined that this horse just drew off and won it by open lengths and ridden today by Jose Valdivia Jr., and certainly the one to beat on this $260,000 son of Bernardini. But I flip-flopped in here. I went with Express Jet on top of my ticket, who loves Gulfstream Park West. That was my theory. 3 starts, 2 wins in the 2nd. So the old horse for course angle came up a little short last time out. But Robusto is certainly going to be the odds-on choice in there. And Express Jet, like I said,
you think Robusto will be that short? You think he'll be odds on?
Yeah, I really do.
Yeah, now you got Valdivia riding. He didn't beat much. He's going to be favored in here. I'm curious to see what the spread is between Fearless Dragon, Express Jet, and Robusto.
The reasoning I'm saying that is just because we see on the top of the screen now the sloppy track, and he cruises, to a 13 length.
Wrapped up.
Yeah, wrapped up. But that's the reasoning. Now, fast track later on in the day, I don't know about that, but that was my thought process in there. Express Jet loved him when all things were going to be equal today to beat Robusto.
I worry about, and I'm a fan of Express Jet. He is as honest as the day is long. I'm a little worried about the wet track for him.
That's what I meant. But, beforehand, I kept the selection away. Beforehand, I thought he might get the best of Robusto on a fast surface.
Now, Fearless Dragon, I think, returns to really what he wants to do, and that's one of these elongated sprints, 7/8 to a mile around one turn. I feel his one-turn races are a bit better, a little more consistent, and a little more quality filled than the two-turn races that he has showing. And I like him cutting back today, and I have no qualms about him handling an off track. He won on the slop a few back over at Gulfstream Park. Nice field in the 8th race today, Ronnie. I'm really anxious to see, wet track or not, what Robusto can do after just never having an anxious moment or taking a deep breath.
Yeah, and I just said with the track conditions that we're dealing with today, I think he's going to be, everyone's going to be giving him a second look, especially when they're putting their tickets together.
And maybe this little, if you could call it a mini schneid for the Pletcher barn at 0 for 6 with a number of short price losses. I'll be anxious to see with Gotta Curlin and Robusto what his current record is at Gulfstream Park West after Saturday's 8th race is completed.
Just when you think that Pletcher's not doing well, he'll reel off about 22 straight victories.
No doubt, no doubt. It's going to happen, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, it will happen. We'll see, though. The chalk players obviously hoping it happens in races 7 and 8. As we move on to race number 9, just a couple more to bring you, and we are off the turf in this $8,000 1 mile and a 16th 3-and-up claiming race in which trainer Elizabeth Dobles is in a good spot, I think, with the 6 Obtal and the 5 Warren's Joe T. Wet track worries me a little bit with Warren's Joe T because his last race was decidedly poor. But I feel as though maybe Obtal just got a little bit of a class edge.
Yeah, and I mean, I went with Warren's Joe T on, second on my ticket. I just like this horse really much more when this race was going to be on the turf today. I thought that even though it ran bad last time out, I thought it was going to be a bit of a long shot. We'd get a price in there. And what I did, with all the scratches, I went to conscious decision. Who figures after rallying to finish third here, against better was a 12-5 optional claim. Move from the grass to a mile and a 16th on the main track. Off that performance, as you did, put him on your ticket. Another race I wish I could go deeper in.
I hear you. I hear you, but unless one of these turf horses like Telling Tony or Sea Cookie really steps up, or even your 5-horse Warren's Joe T, I'm pretty happy having Obtal and Conscious Decision. I feel as though they might just be the 2 best dirt horses in the race, and you've also got the 12 Tempietto on the outside, who's not without a chance.
I added that one for that reason.
Yeah, you bring up some good points, though, with Conscious Decision, and I really feel, even though he was beaten almost 9 last Sunday and he's returning on short rest, just faced a better field, a deeper field, won, obviously, by Got Some Mojo. Let's wrap things up. Race number 10 on the program, and off the turf, 7 furlong, 2-year-old filly, $20,000 maiden claiming race. And my top 2, wish I had a heck of a lot to say here, but I don't. My top 2 are coming out of a race at GP on September 30th in Faithful Sue, who was second, and the 8 Nicky's Warrior. They both ran okay on the dirt last time out. They're both lightly raced with good trainers.
I really like the performance of the number 9, Telling Me Softly, who I thought was sitting on a winning performance on the turf this afternoon. Responded to a drop down, came back, ran second at this level of distance, albeit on the Gulfstream turf. Michelle Nie is the trainer. This horse is bred to love an off track, and if Michelle's keeping it in, I think she thinks it could run well on and off surface. She really places her horses where they belong. So that was my thought process. Song of Melody just for the connections, and Faithful Sue also on my ticket. So Nicky's Warrior took a step in the right direction on the main track.
And I'm hoping that is the case today. Obviously, Michelle has got the horse to beat, running back for 20K. Hands down the easiest race that Telling Me Softly has been in. We'll see, being by a 2-time Sword Dancer winner in Telling at a short price. I wanted to see one on the dirt before I jumped in. Thought he was more bred for turf, but that's the beauty. That's the debate, my friend. Ronnie and I will be with you all day long right here at Gulfstream Park West. It really is good to have you with us, everybody, as we settle in for a Saturday card and send it on up to our man in the sky, the big man, Pete Aiello.